Hey guys, it's Coach KJ here. Yes, I'm here. Even though you can't see me, I'm here. I'm introducing a powerful guest today. Azaria has a story that uh, it will resonate with quite a few people, and it will also be a story that will help people along the lines, for future encounters. We met during a conference call, and she's like, "Hey, look, you know what? I would love for you to interview me." And I was like, "Well, I would love to interview you." So that was kind of how the conversation started. And as an interpersonal communication skills coach, just helping people to get beyond some of the hiccups with communicating what's most important to you. That was kind of where we landed during our conversation earlier today. So I wanted to bring Azaria on and stay tuned because even until the end, she's going to have something very powerful and very insightful that, like I said, even if either you're going to reflect on it, you're going through it, or it's something that you'll most definitely be able to use in the future. So, Azaria, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Hi.
Oh, I thought you
No,
left me
not at
for a
all. I'm still
second.
here.
I was like, did I talk too much? Did I
No,
put her to
not at
sleep?
all. Not at
I
all.
didn't. Because I could talk, girl. You give me a microphone and I'm good to go. I'm good to go. Can you hear me okay? Because I'm just wondering if I need to increase the volume a little bit.
No, I can hear you. You're fine.
Okay. Because I'm also loud. So, you can let me know.
Okay.
Um,
No, you're fine.
but Azaria and I were talking. We had a powerful conversation this afternoon. I said, "Ah, don't say anymore." Because we won't have anything to say during the call that will be unique and fresh and exciting. And one of the things that we were talking about was communication and the importance of communication. And so she actually has a close relationship with her mother, her grandmother, and a little bit more about the community. So tell me a little bit about, the lines of communication that you were talking about, because not everybody has their mother and their grandmother close by.
So pretty much my family dynamic is a little different, but very similar to everybody else's in the Black community. I'm fortunate enough to have my grandmother and my mom, and to see the dynamic from grandmother, mother to now me, which is daughter and granddaughter. Um, it impacts me differently in my everyday, life. I'm able to see what my grandmother has went through, how it affected my mom, and how it affected me as well in my future. Um, and I'm also able to see, I'm grateful for their communication, either to me or to each other, as far as um, how they were raised or what they thought about certain situations, or what they went through in their experiences in life, which kind of molds me into who I am right now.
So they tell you this, they tell you the truth. Because sometimes people be like, "Well, we're not gonna talk about that part of the family. We're not gonna talk about that."
Yeah,
But they you
yeah.
have a very open, huh?
So it's a 50-50. So we, of course, growing up in a Black community, we're going to keep that on the hush. That's kind of how it started off growing up. But my grandmother and my mom's relationship is a little different. But I'm able to get a lot of information from my grandmother. So now, at the age that she's 78 years old or 79, she's able to kind of explain to me what she's been through. It's not sweeping it underneath the rug anymore. It's very open and honest. And that's the same thing with my mom. It's very open and honest as well. I mean, sometimes like pulling teeth, don't get me wrong, but um, they have came to the understanding of healing. And they understand my goal as a 26-year-old Black female, growing up in Baltimore and Maryland, and how rough it was for me growing up, that I'm trying to heal. So I think that because I want to heal, I think that they're trying to heal in their own ways, but through me, if that makes sense.
Hmm. So let me ask you this: your grandmother has a special title. What is she? She's a
So my grandmother is actually a pastor. Yeah, so she's a traveling pastor. Um,
okay.
he started off really young.
And
Her
so with
Go ahead.
no, no, you go.
Okay, so her and my grandfather, they both are pastors. So my mom is a PK, a preacher's kid. Um, and my grandmother just kept that about herself. And we actually, the house that we currently live in was a church. You know, when we got put out of our church at the time, she decided to take the church to her house. So in this very house, I went to Sunday school and everything.
Wow, wow. So communicating with a pastor sometimes is different in the sense that um they're going to steer you towards everything with regards to church and faith, and you know the Lord will take care of it and that kind of stuff. Well,
Yes.
did you think, okay, did you ever think that some of the depth wasn't there maybe with the pastor, or do you think that maybe it was a deeper understanding? Like, tell me what the difference is in communicating with your grandmother as a pastor.
I kind of felt like there was a lack of emotional needs sometimes because uh it was more so God got it. God's going to handle it, which I'm not knocking at all. I do believe that now. I 100% believe that. But I feel like there was also a deeper conversation that needed to be had um when it came to me being younger. I feel like with now me being 26 and I went through a lot, I kind of understand what she means. There's times where I still need that emotional support, but as a child or a young teen, I'm thinking like, what do you mean God got it? Or put it in God's hands, So I think there was a lack of communication sometimes with her being in the church or anything like that, where it kind of got swept underneath the rug. The emotional aspect of things.
Yeah. Sometimes the faith is so deep with clergy until they understand what it means to give everything to God. They understand how to let go. They understand to avoid the anxiety and all the other stress that comes along with trying to handle it yourself.
Yes.
But sometimes people who are newer in their walk or younger or whatever, sometimes they don't have the background, the
Mm-hmm.
experience, the whatever it may be to understand the details. So sometimes, or understand the
Mm-hmm.
depth that comes along with giving it to Christ. So sometimes things get glossed over. Um, and yeah, it is harder for them to comprehend. Now, what about your mother? Was she also in the same vein?
No, so my mom growing up, like I said, she was a PK kid. So I think at some point, the older generation, which is my grandmother's generation, it was more so like do as you say, not as you do, as we do. It was not. It was like we don't ask questions. It's wrong to ask questions. So I feel like my mom got to the point where growing up like that, she kind of didn't want to pass that down to her children. She allowed her children, which she had three of them, for all of us to decide our own path and not be forced into it. My mom is also a singer, so growing up inside the church, of course, she was on the choir. She led the different choirs. She was constantly singing. They used to do Christmas carols, the whole nine. So I think at some point, my mom decided that she didn't want that life for us and for us to decide our own path and what made sense to us and fit with us individually. So no, she wasn't really like that.
Wow. So so you have this strong belief in God. You have this little bit of freedom,
Yes.
along the lines of with regards to religion, etc. Um, and something happens in your life that it made you, I don't know. Tell me a little bit about the scenario that happened with your brother.
Okay. So um I'm gonna start off by saying this. That wasn't the first scenario, but it was definitely one of the major points of my life where I did start to question a lot of things. A lot of things didn't make sense to me. And I felt lost. I felt alone.
A lot of things
So
about religion.
Yes, a lot of things about religion. I'm sorry. Um, so
Religion and what else? I'm sorry, really quickly. Religion and what else did you question?
um, the family dynamic. So religion, family dynamic, communication, uh, just those three things I questioned.
Did you question friendship?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I forgot all about that, but absolutely. I questioned everything in my life at that point. You know, so to tell the story, my brother,
I'm sorry, one last thing.
uh-huh,
Did you question yourself?
I did. I did. Um, oh, I actually did. And this is my first time actually speaking about this publicly. I have never spoke about this, and I want to say thank you for giving me this platform to speak about this, and thank you for being so sweet and kind-hearted and understanding. Um, but so I was around the age of 18. I was in foster care. They have a program called Independent Living. This is like in 2016, 2017. They had a foster care thing called Independent Living where young adults were able to have their own apartments, um, and they're just trained or taught or eased into everyday adulthood. Um, which, hindsight now, I don't think that it was a really good program. I think a lot of things needed to be handled differently. But my brother ended up moving in an apartment. My biological brother, we had the same mother, same father. Um, he ended up moving into an apartment in the same community, right here in Baltimore. Um, and my brother had gotten into a really bad car accident. So he ended up suffering with addiction to medications, of course, that the doctors just gave him without any type of guidance or, any weaning off of the medication after his accident. He had to get a hip replacement at 23, I think. He was in his 20s. I really don't know his age at the time. I'm sorry, but he was in his early mid 20s. Um, so for somebody in their 20s to get a hip replacement, that's really too, soon for something like that. So at the time, my brother was battling with a drug addiction. He was facing financial hardship. Um, and I would go down to see my brother really frequently, pretty much every day, to spend time with him, to see him, to make sure he's okay, to make sure my niece is okay. At the time, my niece was 3 years old. And he would have her almost all the time. So there's one particular day, my brother kept calling me. Uh, leading up to this situation, I'm sorry, leading up to this situation, my brother had told me he had got into a fight with a friend of his. Am I allowed to say names?
Whatever you feel
That's
comfortable with.
fine. So, um, it was a guy named John Anthony Berry. He was somebody who I knew since I was 6 years old. We grew up in the same neighborhood as him. My brother and him were very, very close friends. So was my sister with him. Um, and Mr. Barry had got into a fight with my brother based off of allegations from a female. Um, so they got into a fight at a local
So
gym.
the two men were fighting over a female.
Yeah. So I mean, it was. I wouldn't say over the female from my brother's perspective, but from Mr. Barry's perspective, yes.
Okay.
Uh, so, um, they got into the altercation at the gym or at a basketball court or something like that. And my brother ended up telling me the story. He also told my dad the story. And of course, my dad relayed that to my mom because they are married. So once my brother told me the situation, I asked him, did you do it? Did you, have any type of relation with this young lady? And he told me no, that was his best friend. He wouldn't look at her like that. And also, he has his own girlfriend, which is very true. Um, so in the next coming days, I think it was like 8 o'clock in the morning, maybe 7 o'clock in the morning. My times could be off, but my brother continued to call me all morning for me to come down there to come see him. Um, and on my way to go see him, my mom actually told me to get off the phone and go see him because I was holding her up. So while I was walking down to his house, we literally lived like 3 minutes away. On my way there, I got on the phone with him. I answered the phone. He whispered kind of sort of to me like, hurry up and come on. I'm thinking he's just rushing me. That's just how big brothers are. So on my way down there, I get to his door. Uh, He's not answering the phone. I'm actually on the phone with my sister, our sibling, our oldest sibling. And I see a blood drop on his front step. Um, at this point, I'm thinking that my brother, my brother was a fighter, always was a fighter. So I'm thinking that maybe he got into another fight, maybe, something had happened. So my sister's sitting on the phone waiting for me to go inside my brother's house. And I hear somebody and see the doorknob on his front door twisting and turning. My 3-year-old niece kind of blurts out, "The door is open," which growing up in a household, I know everybody, if you're in a brown black community, we're told not to answer the door without an adult. That's just like a big no-no. So instantly I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know the severity of it. So when I opened the door, here she is standing, 3 years old little girl, um, telling me that her daddy is dead. And those are the words that she used verbatim. Um, so I don't know if you guys can just imagine, you open up a door to a 3-year-old telling you that your brother, her father, is now dead. Um, my brother was a jokester. He was a very big jokester. So I'm thinking, I'm trying to have any type of rational thought process of why would, my 3-year-old niece answer the door like that. At that moment with trauma, I had completely tunnel vision. So when I opened the door, I picked her up. I sat her on my hip. Like I said, once again, complete tunnel vision. I walk in the house. Um, I see my brother laying on the floor. I walk around the couch and I see my brother laying on the floor. At this time, like I said, it was only 3 minutes apart. So there was no way my brother, in my mind at the time, my brother could be gone. Like my brother is actually gone. So in this moment, I did kick him. I kicked him a couple times because I'm thinking he's just playing and trying to play a joke on me until I kicked him for the last time. And I realized he had got murdered inside his apartment. Um, my brother wasn't shot. You know, this was something very close and personal. Most young men in my generation or in my area in Baltimore, they usually get shot. This was very close and personal. Um, my brother was stabbed um, in his neck, in other places in his face, in front of his daughter. He fought for a very long time. Um, but at that point, that's where I seen how gruesome the scene was inside the house. That's when I seen everything that was inside the kitchen. Um, I don't want to get too explicit, but if only you can imagine how, if somebody was to hurt somebody in their neck, stab somebody in their neck, how gruesome it could be, how much of a gruesome scene it could be inside that apartment, that small apartment. Um, so there was a lot of, evidence inside the kitchen. The couch was flipped over. The TV was, still on. Certain things was flipped over. And at that point, I screamed. And my sister, my oldest sister, our oldest sister was on the phone at the time, and my phone had died. As soon as I screamed, my phone died, and my sister was no longer on the phone. So at this point, uh, I'm panicking. Only thing I can think about is getting my niece out of that house because I don't know if the person's still in there. I don't know, are we in danger? The door is closed behind me. So my main focus is getting her out of the house. I get her out the house and realize my phone is dead. I'm standing at the front door. There's two people, I'm assuming a couple, sitting inside the car. Their car is parked directly towards facing the door of the apartments. They got out their car. It took them a second, but they got out the car eventually and asked me, was everything okay? And I explained to them that my brother was dead inside the house. There was also a language barrier. Um, I believe that they were African uh, and spoke little to no English. So that, was really, really hard in that moment to explain to them that I needed emergency help. I needed 911. Um, a young lady at the next door neighbor, or the two neighbors down or something like that, had came out. She explained and kept explaining with me to call 911. Somebody finally called 911. She asked me if I wanted her to hold my niece. At the time, I didn't trust anybody. I was very paranoid because I wasn't sure what happened. I didn't even know that Mr. Barry was there at the time. To my understanding, it was just my brother and my niece, and he had just got her out the tub. Uh, and actually, to kind of go back, on my way down there, when I did get on the phone with my brother, he said, "Hurry up, your niece wants you. I just got her out the tub." Um, so by the time, like I said, all this stuff happened, the young lady offered to take my niece. I passed her my niece. After some time of hesitation, because like I said, I wasn't sure, but I did get like a feeling of confirmation, like it's okay. She had clothes on, she was fully clothed, but it was February, so it was cold outside, and she just had pajamas on, fresh out the tub. So I go inside the house. My main focus at this point is to see if my brother's okay. Um, I did have some type of pre-med training uh, in high school, but at that time, all of that went out of the window. When you're sitting here in front of a loved one, um, in that type of way, you're not sure what to do, and I froze. Uh, I was terrified to touch him. As much as I wanted to touch him and stop the bleeding or whatever I can do, I wasn't even sure if he was alive. I was terrified to even touch him to see if he was alive. So at this point, I'm just, numb to him, and my first priority is her. Years before this, my brother had told me if anything was ever to happen, is to make sure his daughter was okay. So my first priority was instantly her. I made sure I grabbed her a blanket out of the house, and that's when I started to see more of the scene around the house. When I say that my brother bled out in there, it was horrendous. Um, the young man even went through my brother's belongings to change out of his personal clothes into my brother's clothes. Um, I finally was able to get my niece some blankets and whatever I could find, maybe some tennis shoes. I think I grabbed her some tennis shoes. Um, by this point, the ambulance arrived, 911, the police department arrived, and it was just a big scene. Throughout this whole time, I have not dropped one tear. It was not one time that I shed one tear. I was in so much shock. Um, my whole life was just in disarray at this point. Uh, my niece couldn't even comprehend what was going on because she was so young, which amazes all of us because she was able to say, "Daddy is dead." When
Mm-hmm.
paramedics was checking her out, it was a white guy, and he was the sweetest ever, a white paramedic. But we were asking her some questions. She was perfectly fine. She wasn't touched. Um, but we asked her, what did he look like? What did the person look like? Was he white? Was he black? And she was so confused. She said that he looked like the paramedic, but he also looked like us, meaning black.
Mm-hmm.
To find out, when they did do the research and check cameras, Mr. Barry ended up taking one of my brother's white hoodies, and that's what she was trying to communicate. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so by this point, his child's mother had showed up to pick up my niece. She had heard through my sister, who called around. Thank God for my sister, but she called around for everybody to meet me at my brother's house because apparently she knew something was wrong. My brother's baby mom came, picked up her daughter, and some words were exchanged, but I know at the time it was a lot of emotion. Nobody knew what was going on. Um, at this point now, everybody's starting to show up. My dad, my mom. This was a part of the worst part of my life, honestly, was holding back my parents. Mind you, my dad, he's stocky. He's like 5'8". but at the time he was almost like 250, 260. My mom was always small and petite, so she's like 5'2". She can only reach 100 pounds. But still, I was only 18, holding back both of my parents from seeing their son. And that
What do you mean by holding back?
I was
Explain
physically
holding back.
holding them, like physically pushing them, and
Like blocking them.
not from going inside the apartment to see their son like that. Like
Wow.
my words in those situations, like my hands are wrapped around both of them. I'm pushing them and I'm telling them, he's gone. I'm sorry, he's gone. And it was crazy because at the time I was writing a book about my family. And that was the reason why I had stopped writing. Um, so at this point, I'm holding them back. Family starts to show up. Members from the church started to show up. And I actually pushed one of my father's stepbrothers. I pushed him because he tried to hug me. But at this time, I felt so angry because here's everybody showing up because my brother is gone. But where was everybody when he was going through addiction? Where was everybody when he was suffering silently and he was being called a drug addict or, a thief or whatever? Me and my brother have a very horrible past. It's by a long shot, a regular brother and sister relationship. But one thing I can say is my brother always loved me. So I did show up. I forgave him for what, he had put me through as a child, but I still showed up. But here are all these people who are showing up when he's gone, and it was just, it was baffling to me. Like, you know, he's gone. Like, why are you here now?
Did your forgiveness at that time, you're forgiving your brother, play a greater role in peace, guilt? Like, what do you think it did? Your forgiveness, your willingness to forgive him beforehand.
So let me say this. I don't think I ever really forgave him. I don't think I forgave him until recently. I think more so if it was a situation of maybe not forgiveness. Maybe that was the wrong word, but maybe um
Allowing him back into your life.
I don't think it was allowance either. I think allowance is a little too tough. Maybe acceptance,
Okay.
because I understood the pain that we all went through growing up. And then I
Okay.
kind of understood the pain that my parents went through growing up. So with the generational thing, that goes back to like the communication part, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of understood what he went through. I sympathized. I empathized, I sympathized, with my brother in those situations. So I kind of just, I had to be there. I put some things aside and just had to be there for him while he was alive. So like I said, my mind was just everywhere. Why are these people showing up? Like he's gone. What are you here for now? Um, so at this point now, the police. At this point now, I can throw up. I'm throwing up because I can't believe it. Did I just really see my brother like this? It wasn't until I got into the car, because now I'm being questioned. I have to go down to the police precinct, which is very traumatizing. Um, but now I have to go down to a police precinct to be questioned. We get into the car, me and my mom, and only thing I can remember me screaming to my mom the whole ride down there was that I was sorry. I'm sorry if I dropped some tears too. Like I said, this is the first time I'm ever speaking about this. Um, and it's sad because a lot of people in my community, in our community, in my age group, we all go through this. I'm not going to be the first nor the last person to have a story like this. And hopefully, soon to come, that this will be starting to, die down with the violence. But, I will never forget the day that I had to cry. And, it felt like I was begging for my mom's forgiveness at that point, even though I didn't do anything, you know? Um, I will never.
Forgiveness for what? Forgiveness what?
I ended up understanding that it was forgiveness for not being there so fast. I always thought that I had to be there, or if I could have been there earlier, I could have saved them. If I could have been there earlier, it would have been us fighting against John, not just him alone. Um, I grew up in a house where it was family over everything. My dad used to preach about that because they come from both of my parents come from two broken homes. So they believed in family. They believed in foundation, and it was us against the world. You know, no matter what went on in our household, anything outside of that household couldn't infiltrate, what we had going on. And I felt bad because I felt like I let them down. I felt like I dropped the ball as the child who I'm not going to say I'm not going to say that maybe I dropped the ball as the child that kind of had a little bit more together than both of them. So I cried, I screamed, I begged my mom in that police car on the way down there to the point where I'm, throwing up inside the police car, and you know, I'm just begging her for forgiveness. I will never
And what did
forget.
she say?
It wasn't my fault, and it was okay. And she was just rubbing my head the whole time because my head is laying on her lap, and I actually feel like I said my mom is very, very small. We all are bigger than my mom. So for my big old head to be laying on her lap, like a child, like I was 3 years old again, like I was my niece's age, I know she couldn't, I couldn't even fathom what my mom went through in that moment. To have to console another child, but also knowing that you just lost another one, that lady's strong. You know, um, she's so strong because not one point did she not address my feelings right then and there. At one point did she not console me as her child, knowing that she just lost another one not even 5 minutes ago. So uh we get to the police precinct and I'm being questioned. This is like I think in downtown Baltimore. I really don't remember. Um we get there and I don't have a problem with Baltimore City Police or Baltimore police at all. But I feel like there's a lack of sympathy um for situations that happen like this. This is not my first encounter with the police department where uh certain things were said that really hurt. While I was sitting there, which it was cold, I wasn't treated to a blanket. I wasn't treated to, anything to drink. Um, I was actually treated like a suspect in that situation.
Azaria, I want to ask you something.
Yes.
Tell me something. Do you think that because you mentioned there are a lot of deaths or shootings in Baltimore, do you think the police could kind of be, um, I want to say maybe numb to it?
They are. I
One of the things that a lot of people don't know is that there's a very high rate of suicide amongst policemen.
mm,
And so when they see and hear this trauma day in and day out, because I don't think any of them took the job to see death every day. I think they took the job to help save lives and make communities better. But once you see it every day and you realize that it's out of your hands and you're helpless and you're trying to help, but no matter what you do, it's not enough, and you're still seeing this. And then when you go home, you can't talk about that kind of stuff with your wife. You can't
right,
talk about that stuff with the kids. You got to
right,
keep all that death, all those incidents, all those, if I had just come a few minutes earlier, you
right,
know, this is every single day, sometimes two, three times a day. And
right.
hearing that
Maybe
every day,
more. Maybe more.
for sometimes for policemen, it may be tough for them to become emotionally engaged, because then they've got to do emotional engagement, 20 times.
Right.
And that could really lead to something worse. Even with doctors have such a high rate of morbidity until there is a National Physician Suicide Day, September 17th, because they face so much until it gets hard. And we're not talking about suicidal ideations, which is higher. We're talking about people who actually commit suicide because it is tough dealing with death every day. So
Right.
I just want to say, know that there are very good policemen out there. There are people who definitely care, but they also have to try and do things sometimes, like you said, you become numb, you don't want to hug, you don't want to this, to deflect the pain of seeing death every day. Not only do they see the death, then they have to go find the family members and tell the family members that they just lost a loved one.
Right. But that goes to
So,
kind of the saying of who's having therapy for the therapist, right? And
yeah, yeah,
I feel like that if that's the case, which I'm very aware of, I definitely put myself in other people's shoes. So I take nothing away from their job at all. I think that knowing that there's a high chance of certain officers having suicide attempts or just suicide in general, I think there should be more therapists or counseling within the police department because
there is. There is therapy and counseling within the police department. There are a lot of supports available for them. I believe Maryland, even to the point, because of the high suicide rate, you have to double check.
okay,
They have even passed a law stating that if a policeman commits suicide, the wife will still receive the insurance benefits because the rate is
mm,
so high. And I don't want to get off track. I don't want to get off track,
right,
but I
right,
do want to say that as you were feeling like you were not being attended to, or they were not caring, there is a reality of a very high level of stress when you take a job to save lives, and each and every day or week or whatever it is, you see lives lost. You're
yeah,
trying to save lives, you're trying to save your own life, and then you see other lives lost. So I want to ask this: with everything that's going on, and you're talking about your grandmother and your relationship with your grandmother, what was communication like with her? Now, you're telling me with your mother, it was kind of just a guilt thing,
yeah,
that you were having a heavy remorse. What was communication like with your grandmother at that time?
absent, completely absent, completely absent. I can barely remember her at that time. Yeah, I can definitely barely remember her at that time.
Do you think
Um,
she was overwhelmed?
Possibly, she's very much so a person who, like I said, she's in that older generation, so she sweeps things underneath the rug. And like I said, going back to what I said earlier, it's kind of like I'm gonna just put it in God's hands, instead of just facing the reality of how I actually feel. And I think that a lot of people forget that I have the right to feel like this, but I can also put it in God's hands. So I do think she was going through something, absolutely, because that was one of her only grandsons. But I think that she kind of just swept it underneath the rug.
And when did anybody ever address it afterwards? Like, where were you during this process? The, it,
Absolutely. So I'm the child. I laugh, but I'm one of the kids who are considered the black sheep because I'm going to speak my mind. I have no problem with saying anything out my mouth. If I have a question, I want to know because I'm about healing. I'm about healing. So I have asked her. She has told me that there was nights that she did cry. Um, she did tell me that that was her only grandson. So she did feel or go through grief. But I think that she just put on a mask to hide what she was going on because she had to feel like she had to be the strong one, or maybe she wasn't allowed to feel emotions due to her childhood. So now she feels like she has to hide her emotions now. So I did bring it up to her, and she did let me know that she did grieve. She would cry alone, and things like that.
Azari, what you're saying right now is going to bring healing to some people because there are kids, parents, whatever out there that are saying, why isn't my mother or why isn't my father coming to my rescue? Like, why aren't they talking to me? Can't they see what I'm going through? But
Mm-hmm.
parents are grieving too, grandparents are grieving too, and they grieve in their own way.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, older generations are taught to grieve quietly, grieve alone. Don't grieve in front of other people because you have to maintain that sense of
Mm-hmm.
control. Like you're able to control the crowd. So, but what
Mm-hmm.
you're saying, what you're sharing right now is going to free a lot of people and help a lot of people better communicate and understand and empathize, as families go through challenging situations. I wanted to ask, did your sister, how was your role with your sister during this time period?
Ooh, I'm not going to get into too much detail about that, but there, she was my go-to. I did go stay at her house for some days because I didn't want to be alone. Once again, like I said, I was in foster care. So I was in an independent living program where I was living by myself or with a roommate who you barely know. So I did go stay at my sister's house, but it wasn't an emotional, safe environment. Not saying I wasn't allowed to cry, but there was no understanding of grief at that time. She had her own family, she had her own situations. Um, so yeah, but
So,
there was some conflict between me and her, and it still is, or some heavy-hearted feelings towards each other about that day.
so how was your communication with God during that time period? As you said, your grandmother would always tell you to give it to God.
I was
How was
mad.
your communication?
I can say pissed. I was pissed. I was pissed. I was upset.
Did you tell him you were mad?
I did. I did. I absolutely did. And, I was pissed because I just couldn't understand how could God let my brother go through this in front of his niece? How could God rip something like that so fast? Why didn't God give me a chance? Why did it have to be me? That was really one of the biggest questions. Why did it have to be me to be there? Why did I have to see that? After all of the things I've been through, and I'm only 18, I just turned 18. Why me? I'm the one in foster care. I'm the one who had to be alone and grow up in the system. And, I didn't grow up like my brother and my sister. So I didn't understand why me? Why do you have to keep putting me through things? Give me a break, you know? Um, or why didn't it he had a daughter? Why didn't you take me? At the time I felt like my life wasn't worthy of, living past 18. He had a child. He had a 3-year-old little girl. He had somebody he had an obligation to raise as a Black father who was active in his daughter's life. Despite anything else, he was active in his daughter's life. Why didn't you take me? Not only you didn't take me, but you also forced me to go through this. You also forced me to see this, which is very traumatic. You also forced me to, you know, have to be strong for my family. Why me? So I absolutely did have that conversation with God, and God knows my heart. Despite how anybody else might feel in the situation, trust and believe. My relationship with God is something that nobody, no man could ever understand. Could ever understand. Um, but absolutely, I was very upset, very frustrated. Um,
And so when you asked him why, did he give you an answer?
Eventually, yes. Eventually, It might have took, a couple nudges. It might have took a couple years. Might have took a couple other situations. But absolutely. Still, sometimes I don't understand the answer. But I know a part of the answer is the reason why I'm talking to you right now. A part of the answer is the reason why I'm talking to whoever hears this now or in the future. Um, that God is very real, and we ask we ask our higher power to use us in so many ways, but we are not specific. We ask our higher power to use us and lead us and guide us to help others, but we are not specific, and it's not our plan, and we forget that. It's not our decision, and we forget that. Um, so absolutely, he definitely explained to me why. You know.
So you were missing communication, or you had the guilt relationship with your mother. You were missing communication with your grandmother. There were some challenges or some confrontations with your sister. You were upset with God.
Mm-hmm.
Who did you call on? Who helped you during this process?
Um, I don't want to miss out my dad for a second before I
Oh,
tell
I'm
you.
sorry.
It's okay. It's
We
okay.
just doing girls rule the world right now. We ain't talking about men. Men ain't got nothing to do with this conversation. No, I'm
It's
just kidding.
okay. It's fine. But I want to let it be known because there's a stigma on Black families. Um, Very small snippet. My father has no education. He raised 3 children, no outside, marriages. His first marriage with his first wife. Um, they've been together for years. And he did all of this with no education. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. It was a lot of trauma in that house that we are all healing from. But when I tell you my dad showed up as a man, as a Black man in that situation, he showed up as much as he could. Um, my dad has always been a funny person. He definitely sweeps things underneath the rug. He will try to find the light in any situation that is dark. Uh, so my dad in that moment was more so of the funny person, of reminding us what my brother Anthony brought to our lives, that was the light in the dark for us. Um, so my dad definitely played a very big role of making sure his children was fine, the ones who were still alive, his grandkids were okay, and most importantly, his wife. To the point where I think that his mental illness, or his mental, not illness, but his mental health got uh, swept underneath the rug as well. Um, I don't remember my dad grieving as much until the funeral. It's very difficult seeing a grown man cry, especially a Black dad. We all know how it is. We look at Black dads like they're superheroes. They're like, a 4-leaf clover. They're special, they're rare. So when you do see one cry, it's like, you cry, you have emotion, you're sad. It's rare. So to see my dad break down in that way, um, mind you, my dad always been big on emotions. He never not told us it wasn't okay to cry. You know, uh, he always let us cry. Very thankful for that. But to see him cry like that was a way. It was a different feeling. Um, he lost his only son, the son that was named after him. You know, so my dad played a very big role. So I really greatly appreciate him. But the person that was there for me in that time was a friend of mine, a best friend of mine. We've been together since 10th grade. Um, and she showed up. The moment that I told her, I wasn't even at the police precinct yet. I think that I had actually, I had just found my brother dead, and everybody was inside, the parking lot or whatever. And I called her to tell her what happened. Don't ask me how I was able to charge my phone. I don't remember, but I know that I did get on the phone with her. I told her what happened. She had got off of work, left work early, and met me up as soon as I was done at the police precinct. I told her I wanted to run away. I never really been outside of Baltimore, so my running away was going to the outskirts of PG County, or in the PG County area, Prince George's County area. I got a motel at Red Roof Inn. It was like $50 at the time. I had paid for the hotel, and she sat with me all night, all morning. I was scared to take a shower by myself. She sat on the toilet of the Red Roof motel room uh, while I bathed myself until I was okay with being alone in the room. Um, and she stayed with me the whole time. She stayed with me the whole time. Even at my brother's memorial service, because we didn't have a regular funeral. His body wasn't there. We got him cremated. And we were actually at a new church that has a different way of viewing things. So she sat there, hand in hand. I still have a picture to this day, and I'll send that to you, KJ, of her holding my hand while my head is resting on my sister's shoulder. Um, and she's front and center with me, holding my hand, you know. Um,
And so, is that the person that you were able to communicate with and go deeper in your story? I mean, did you go deeper with your pain with your dad, or
no, I
was it
went deeper
her?
in pain with her, completely with her. Um, Everything that I thought in that moment, like I said, that was a tough situation. So at that time, I'm thinking anything, things like that actually will send people and make them crazy, you know. And I was able
Wait,
to
what did you say will send people and make them go crazy?
um situations like how I felt my brother would make
Okay.
people really go crazy. And I was able to tell her and express everything how I felt, no matter, how small or how big, whatever I felt, I was able to tell her without her judging me or looking at me like I was crazy, or, telling me like, you're crazy, girl, like you're tripping. It was nothing like that. I was able to express every single thing. Um, and in that moment, she was able to just be a true friend and listen to me and let me vent. Um, until
Were
I
you able to express more to her than you were to God?
No, I expressed more to God than her, but I would say it was damn near close. Absolutely, absolutely. It
Do
was
you think that
close.
her response was more immediate and God's was taking a long time?
I don't feel like I received a response from both of them. I feel like I received a response from her because she was physically there, and that comfort that I needed was what I needed
Hmm.
at the time, that physical comfort. But let me say this. I feel like now that I'm thinking about it, now that you said it, I feel like that was God in that moment. Not saying that she was God, but I feel like God had put her in my life ahead of time because God knew I was going to need somebody like her.
Exactly.
Somebody who was able to listen, somebody who was able to rationalize my thoughts, somebody who was able to just let me talk and vent in those situations without putting herself first. She was so selfless in that situation. She always been very selfless, but she was very selfless in that situation. So now, like I said, in hindsight, I think that God used her to be there. We believe that nothing um happens by chance, and that was not by chance.
Exactly. Exactly. God knew the voids that were going to be in your life before they came, right?
Absolutely, it's all written.
And
It's all
he
written.
knew and he knew the depth of your pain because he built you. He knows the hairs on our head, so he knows the ins and outs. He
Absolutely.
knows what we will decide before we decide, right?
Absolutely.
So, understanding the depth of what you were about to go through, or that you would soon go through, he put someone there to make sure that you still had the comfort, the Holy Spirit, the Comforter. He still made sure that you had the comfort, right? That's what God believes in giving us, is a comforter, a
Hmm.
reminder that he's there, that he's present.
Absolutely.
And so, but you still were challenged by the lack of communication or inconsistency in communication from the church, or what, because something happened with the church. That's what I'm trying to understand.
So the church wasn't there for me. Um, they were definitely there for my mom. I'm not sure how deep, because that's my mom's situation. I know that they were there for certain other people in my family. I'm not sure how they were there for them. But at no point from my experience did I have anybody, and everybody knew the story. You know, there was not one story that I heard that nobody knew that I felt my brother like that, or my niece was there. You know, um, but not at one point did I hear anybody. Of course, I had got the "we're sorry, Azaria, and if you need us, feel free to reach out." But that's not what I want to hear. That's not what I need. I don't want to reach out to you. First of all, I'm 18 years old. I'm not really big in church. I don't want to reach out to you. Reach out to me. Ask, can you come pick me up? Ask, can you stop by just to pray for me? Ask, can you, Azaria, do you need anything? Have you taken a shower? Have you brushed your teeth? Have you did your hair? You know, things like that. I feel like in situations like that, the church should have, had somebody to outreach to every single person in the family who needed comfort. Somebody for the mom, somebody for the dad, a man for the dad, a man who could understand what my dad was going through at the time, a woman that understood what my mom was going through at the time, or they didn't have to physically go through it themselves, but at least they could, be there emotionally, be that support system. And somebody who could have been my support system. The young lady could have been in her early 20s, who was a member of the church, or even her early 30s, to step up and be like, hey, I'm here. I'm pretty sure somebody had a granddaughter, a niece, something that they could have been like, hey, come over the house. We're cooking, we're watching TV. And if I would have said no and turned it down, they could have still said, you know what, we have your address. We're going to come show up and check on you.
Do you ever, I mean, you said this um so clearly, right? Like there's no ambiguity in your thoughts or your concerns. Have you ever thought about, remember when you were talking about writing that book? Have you ever thought about writing the church and
No,
saying, this is what I need?
no,
This is what people who are grieving need?
no.
Because maybe sometimes people don't do things because they just don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
You've been doing the same thing over and over and over again, and you're taught basically just make sure that the mom is okay. And so that's what you continue to do in practice because that's just how things are done traditionally. Because
yeah,
what you're saying is so powerful. I bet you people don't know that. I bet you
yeah.
church leaders don't know that. I mean, I bet you, as a former church leader, we are taught to, we were taught to go to the house, right? Like as a church leader, we were taught when something like this happens, you go to the house, you look and see if they need food, you look and see, what type of assistance they need. I've had, you know, church members go and actually wind up helping to clean the house, you
Hmm.
know, because it's overwhelming. Um, but not all churches have done that because a lot of times within families, we're like, no, we got it.
Right.
No, we can do it. And that standoffishness or that privacy, also needs to be respected. So what you're saying is powerful that kids, you're 18, but there are kids who experience death or see death at 15, 16, you
Mhm.
know, much, much younger, your niece 3, that churches may not know that, hey, look, you know what, we need to dig a little bit deeper because um, adolescence, I'll just tell you this really quickly. Adolescence is when we have the highest gray matter mass on our brain. That means that we are able to adjust to situations more quickly. We're able to, think or problem solve more quickly and form opinions. Our emotions are high with puberty and the rest. Form long lasting opinions more
Mhm.
quickly in that time period. So it's very important that you guard that time period during adolescence to make sure that people are feeling loved and nurtured and supported so that after age 21 and after it's over, they can still have that uplift within themselves, and they can also at the same time help others along the way. Because
Right.
your story is, like I said, you're going to help a lot of people. And I know you might say, look, you know what, my goal is to help the victims, but you're going to help the people who help the victims, because sometimes victims are going through, and as you said, they can't talk. They
Mhm.
can't talk, they can't respond, they don't want to hug, they don't want this. They are just going through. They run, they freeze, they do all these different
Mhm.
things because they're going through. And when they do this, if I come to you to the initial time and I see you're like, oh no, don't touch me or whatever, whatever, I might think, okay, they're good, don't come back because that's how you are, right?
Right.
But
Right.
you're teaching a lot of people something very powerful. You're teaching parents and grandparents about the importance of communication, authentic communication, you
Right.
know. Hold my hand, tell me you love me, tell me something to
Right.
build me up during this time because I need you, right?
Literally anybody could in that moment, even though I didn't want to be touched, and was more so specifically by that person, which is a long story. But if anybody from the church could have gave me, or anybody could have just been like, breathe, Azaria, you know, breathe, stop pacing back and forth, because at that moment I'm trying to solve the case along with the police officers. I'm telling them there's, traces of this going around the building. It's cameras right here and it's cameras right here. At some point I wish somebody would have just been like, Azaria, come here, breathe. I could have told them get away from me, but even if they would have stayed next to me or kept a safe distance if they felt unsafe and just said, Azaria, I'm right here. I'm right here. When you need me, I'm right here. That would have been fine.
So get away from me doesn't mean go away. It means
No,
don't be up in my space.
exactly. It could be. It's different for
Understand
everybody.
my personal space, and we're good.
Exactly. I feel like it's different for everybody, but everybody has their preference. But I feel like majority of people, if you would just let them know, okay, if you don't feel comfortable, I'm over here, but I'm right here, Zaria. And even say your name. We're gonna use your name. Azaria, I'm over here by the pole. This is KJ. I'm here though for you. When you need me, I'm right here. Even if you didn't feel comfortable to be next to me. You don't know how I'm gonna react, and I understand that. That's fine. You need to protect yourself first. But in those moments, I would have remembered KJ is right there and I need her. You know, I know she's right here by this pole. I'm gonna calm down, I'm gonna go over there and I'm gonna cry in her arms. Or if I didn't do that, it could have been a simple, I don't have nobody to talk to right now, and I'm alone in this apartment, and I'm trying to figure out how I feel. And I'm mad at God. I'm mad at this person. I'm mad at that person. But I remember KJ's voice in the back of my head. I might have had tunnel vision at the time, but I remember her saying that, you know. Um, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna call her because she told me she was gonna be there for me.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
So
Right. And
different
and
things
you
like
know,
that.
having somebody to call.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, and having somebody to call during the process. So you are powerful. You are amazingly powerful. And I say that because I have to say it over and over again because every time I hear your story and I hear the depth, I just get another layer of strength. And you and I talked in the beginning about the importance of healing and communication.
Yes,
I think communication is just key with everything, right? And that's being able to communication is not it's actually listening and understanding the depth and validating the person who's speaking. So,
absolutely.
how did you get to a point where you are now where you can so confidently state your needs whereas you weren't beforehand? Like, what was the change, or what are some of the changes, or what were the building blocks? If you could say step one, step two, step three, what are those things? Because I want listeners to understand how to begin healing.
So, first of all, I want to say thank you so much. I hear people tell me how strong I am so many times, but people like you make me really feel like that. So that right there is a part of the healing. I don't know what step that is, but that's a part of it. Healing never stops. That's first and foremost. The idea that healing is, oh, I do this, I do that, and I'm good. I'm okay. I no longer feel anything towards that. That is completely false. You can feel absolutely okay today, and then the next 2 months you're crying about that situation and you don't understand why you're crying about it. Healing never stops, and that is okay. But you change your coping mechanisms, you change, you find your coping skills first. So the first step honestly is understanding what happened. In any situation, I don't care what it is. You need to understand. It's a part of acceptance. This happened. This is what happened. Don't try to think beyond it. Don't try to think, anything other than what happened. You have to state the actual facts of how you felt in that situation. This was my emotion. I was angry. I was upset. I was hurt. Who were you angry at? Who were you upset at? That's a part of that acceptance point. The second step is finding help. As much as the Black community doesn't like therapists, we look down on therapists, but that's very important. And the reason why I say therapist is because a therapist is not going to judge you. They are literally there to listen to every crazy, dramatic, whatever that you have going on internally. They're there to listen to it. They're not going to judge you. Their advice is not judgmental. It's advice. It's exactly that. So find you a good therapist. And the way I've been in therapy since I was 11 years old. I'm 26 now. I have went through white therapists. I have went through young therapists. I have went through old therapists. I have did face-to-face therapy, in-person therapy, Zoom therapy. I have done trauma therapy. I have done every single type of therapy you could probably think of. There's still some more therapies I'm going to try, because that's how big I am on therapy. But um, it's about finding what fits you. What might fit me doesn't fit my mom. So what I did was I found a therapist that I gave the company that I go to a very specific, detailed list of what I wanted out of a therapist. First of all, she needed to be in her late 30s or early 30s. Like in her 30s was fine, but not older than 30. I needed her to be an African American. I needed her to have some type of understanding on. I need her to be a little youthful. I needed her to be a little hip. And the reason why I needed that was because that's what I'm going through right now. But she has more insight as an older, mature woman with a license who went through school for her to understand me. And it was only God who was able to give me the therapist I have now. When she meets every single thing and everything I come to her with, she's able to walk me through and we're able to analyze every single point, you know? Um, so therapy is very important. Find what fits you. I don't like going in person to therapy. I like doing on the phone. I'm a very particular person when it comes to being on time. On the phone, in person, you're not going to get me on time, but on the phone, you're going to get me on time. So we stick to a very specific schedule. She answers the phone. If she's late, she's able to communicate that with me because I'll start panicking, especially if I'm going through something in that situation, at that time. We only meet once a week. So of course I have a handful for her. But and it could be past traumas that popped up and, due to PTSD. So we have those conversations and we're able to work through it. We're able to find some coping skills, some new coping skills, or reuse old ones. So therapy is very, very important in finding what fits you. Looking for therapists is like trying on a pair of tennis shoes. Just because it looks good on Emily doesn't mean it's going to look good on you. Um, so yeah, that's one. Two, I mean three. Turn to God. I went through being Christian growing up to being spiritual in my teens, early 20s, to now I am Muslim. I have converted to Islam in this year during Ramadan. Alhamdulillah, and Alhamdulillah just is Arabic for praise God, thank God. We say that after every single thing that we say to give God that acknowledgement. Um, so I turned to Islam, and the reason why I turned to Islam was because I found peace. Islam teaches not only about Islam, about the Arabic religion, it also teaches about Judaism and it teaches about Christianity. There has been a lot of stigmas on Islam about how we don't believe in God or, we don't believe in Jesus, and actually we do. This is me coming from just converting to Islam as a black 26-year-old female. We believe in Jesus. Absolutely do. We believe that he was a prophet and he did his major part in bringing the word of God. But we also believe in all the other prophets. There's lists and lists and lists of prophets that we believe in, right?
Do you think that do you think that all the building blocks, right? All the building blocks that you made were what was needed or what is needed to make you strong? Could you take one out or do you
No,
need all those blocks?
I need all of them.
Right. And the communication with your family would make it better, would make it even better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like, between every single last one of them, uh, they all play a very big role in my healing journey. And if, like I said, it's like a car part. If I take a wheel off, I cannot drive this car. So between my family dynamic, which is taught in therapy, family is very important in therapy. We're asked, who's our what's the word I'm looking for? Our support system, right? In family. So in therapy, we're asked that. We're also asked that in um we're also asked that in Islam, or we're told that in Islam, in my religion, that who is your support system, you know. So we talk about that as well. We're actually taught in Islam like this is your family. When I took Shahada, which is just saying, and Shahada is all just saying that, I believe in one God and one God only, and that, the prophet is the last prophet. Um, but, not to go too deep into that, but just once I took Shahada, the Imam, which is the preacher, he literally told me, like, one, all your sins are forgiven. You are literally starting a new life. And everybody in this room, every Muslim that you see, they are your family. Feel free to call. And not one time have I not been able to call one person that I met on my walk of converting to Islam or being Muslim. I cannot call to this day.
Did that happen with Christianity? Were you able to
Absolutely
call
no.
people?
No.
Did you try to call them and they
Yes.
didn't respond, or they just didn't make themselves
Yes.
available, like you couldn't
Not
find the
during my
number?
brother's situation. I mean, I'm lying. I did try to call some people during my brother's situation, but it wasn't what I needed. I think that it became a point where and I'm not anti-Christian or anything like that, but like I said, we
No, but
believe.
you're being authentic.
Yeah.
You're being authentic, and in your authenticity, you're going to help people. Like I said, church leaders will, presumably church leaders will listen to this, and they'll understand more of what the congregation needs. You
Right.
know, maybe your family members will hear this and they'll understand more of what individuals need. So no, your authenticity is what is needed, because there are people who are going through trauma that don't know how to communicate as effectively as you are communicating what they need, right?
Right.
So
Right.
you're a voice piece for a lot of people, and that's powerful. That's a heavy weight.
Yeah.
That's a heavy weight to carry, but it's powerful. And
Yeah.
when you're talking about reaching out to people and not getting a response, you're teaching people, once again, like I said, how to move forward. So if you were, I'm gonna give you three audiences right now. If you were to speak to a young adult, right, someone who's growing up, may face trauma, your audience, the people that
Hmm.
you work with in your business, what would you tell them about communication? What could you have done differently, or what should they do differently if they are going through trauma or a difficult situation and they need the support of the church? What could be done?
First of all, I would tell them to speak up. I would tell them that it is nothing wrong with how you feel. I would tell them that everything that you feel right now is valid, and there's somebody uh, that can help you, maybe
Keep
in the
pressing.
church, to help you go through what you're going through.
That's exactly what I believe. Keep pressing until you find that person,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And as you said, sometimes they're in the church, sometimes they're not in the church, but keep pressing,
Yeah.
right?
There's somebody out there. There's somebody out there.
What would you say to the elders in the church right now that they need to know about people who are going through?
Hmm. Ooh, what would I say to the elders? Listening is key. You are respected. You are very wise, but sometimes listening and being an ear is key. Um, but also, some people don't want an ear. Some people don't want you to be quiet. Some people want some advice. And the best way to do that is, of course, find those passages in the Bible or the Quran or the Torah, whatever, to explain to this person right now what they're going through, and that nothing is new underneath the sun, but they are very valid. Their feelings, their emotions are very valid, and that this is a safe space. That's very important to let a person know that it is a safe space. That doesn't mean that you go run and tell Sister Jones what they told you in confidence. That's between you, that person, and God. God entrusted, and that's a bigger thing, right? I want people to remember, especially the elders, God trusted you with that role. If you don't remember anything else, remember when a person comes to you to tell you what they're going through, to be a shoulder to cry on. God trusted you for that. Are you going to fail? Are you going to act accordingly? Because we all have to go through a judgment day. And when we go through that judgment day and we're asked, what did you do in this situation? That's going to be very vital. So, like I said, be mindful. Everything isn't for everybody.
One of the things
Go ahead.
one of the things I would encourage people to do also is there are several, and I'm talking to leadership. There are several hotlines, resources available out
Absolutely.
there, 1-800 numbers. If you don't know the answer, which you're not going to know the answer to everything, keep a list of those 1-800 numbers, those resource numbers, so that when somebody is going through, you can call them together. So
Yes.
while they're getting advice, right, on what to do, you're also getting advice on how to support.
And try not to leave them alone with those hotline numbers, because in that moment a lot of people don't want to do the hotline numbers and talk to a complete stranger. And then sometimes those hotline numbers aren't so, uh what's the
Knowledgeable.
word? Yeah, yeah, or soft spoken, So it's
Uh,
better for, when you're snotty, you're crying, you're going through what you're going through. It's better to have somebody there who can say, you know what, I'm gonna call this number because I don't know everything, but I'm gonna call them, where we're gonna sit down and do this together. That togetherness is very important. That community, that's very important.
powerful, powerful. And then what would you say the third audience is? What would you say to family? What would you say to family or friends? You could pick either one. What would you say to family or friends?
Um, to family, everybody at their time is grieving. One person's grief is not deeper than the next, but we all need to be able to uh, hear each other out, love on each other at the moment, understand each other, um, and help out where each other is lacking. You know, that's very important. Keep in touch, because just because the situation happened a year ago doesn't mean a person is not still suffering with it today. So keep in mind, even though we have our own things to handle throughout our day, I'm not saying take away from what you got going on, family or friends, but also take a time and remember, oh, that person had this happen. Let me call them and ask them if they're okay. And it doesn't mean to necessarily bring it up, because you don't want to really bring it up, but it's okay to say, you went through a lot and I admire you and I'm proud of you, and you are very strong. You're a strong person. You're a strong mom. You're a loving mom. Speak affirmations into them. That is okay. Not every gift has to be physical or money spent. You can literally write a letter, put it in the mail. Sometimes letters are worth a lot. And I know we don't do that a lot in this day and age, but that physical letter of the I ams and the affirmations and a ayat or a passage out of the Bible, anything could mean a lot to a person, that they keep rereading it, and that could be their reason for a lot, their reason to get up, their reason to walk around. So just remind that person that they are very strong. Despite everything they've been through, they are very strong and they are loved. They are supported, they are loved, you know, and you're here. That one I'm here for you, it can cover a room of thousands of people. You substitute a room of thousands of people with that one I'm here.
And then the last thing, I'm going to add a fourth one. You know how some people are, they just greedy. I said
Yeah.
three, but now I want four. I want more. I want more. I want more.
Yeah.
Um, what is the thank you that you would say to the leaders in the Muslim community or the person that
Ooh.
helped you that particular day? But what is the thank you that you would say to them that they may not even know? They may not even know that what they did for you left an indelible mark and has made you stronger today.
Ooh. First of all, I just called the imam the other day. He's a very busy person, but he was able to drop everything in that moment and listen to me cry. Um, but to anybody who ever took the time out even you, KJ, to anybody who took the time out to listen to me, to hear my story, to not judge me on if my grammar was perfect or what I'm crying about, or, you know, to wipe my nose because I'm crying, or brush my hair. Um, you are more valuable than any dollar bill, any piece of gold, any diamond in this world. And may God, may Allah, may Yahweh, whoever you call him, may he grant you the highest form of heaven possible, because you were so selfless in that moment when you could have been selfish, but you were selfless. And you listen to the whispers, you listen to the teachings of God by our prophets of this whole world. You listened and you followed through, and you did exactly what we are all made to do here, and that's love one another. So nothing I can do, no amount of thank yous will ever cover. This goes for anybody who ever helped me, listened to me cry, anything like that. You are more valuable than anything in this world in that moment. And just because you were there in that moment, I pray God gives you the highest form of heaven possible, because that kept me going to who I am today, who I see myself being in the future, the Azaria as a mom, the Azaria as a wife, the Azaria as a coach, the Azaria as a leader, the Azaria as, whatever that these future young females see me as. Um, because not only did you help me, but you helped so many other people, because now I'm able to help them.
Azaria, you are just powerful and beautiful.
Thank you.
I thank you. I thank you for your kind words. I thank you for even the future promise of being able to share your personal story, um, interview you about your personal story. And I know because of the gift that people have given you, the kindness that they've shown you, you have a desire to help more people heal and
Hmm.
grow through the process. And you've actually started a business,
Yes.
and you're available for coaching. And I was hoping that you could give your contact information, because I don't want the computer to shut off or the timer to shut off. I don't know how long we
Okay.
have, but I was hoping that you could give your contact information, so that people could contact you directly, especially if they've experienced anything with regards to grief, um, domestic violence, and are there any other particular topics that you highlight or you emphasize?
So of course, like you said, the grief, the sexual abuse, sexual trauma, domestic violence, um, any type of assault or anything like that. If you're not sure of, I don't have a lot of information on religion, but if you're not sure about what you believe, I don't care if you're Christian, Muslim, anything. If you're free spirited, but you just need that guidance, you just need somebody. I'm definitely here. So that's what I offer, especially situational awareness for young teens, young females, single moms, elders in the church community. So my business is called Pink Armory. That's PINKARMORY. Um, I emphasize that I'm a firearms instructor, but now my title has officially increased. Thank God. Uh, Glory be to God. Um, but so you can reach me at www.pinkarmory.com. That's PINKARMORY.com. My email is the same. It's PINKARMORY llc@gmail.com. Um, so, and then I also have social media, which is Pink Armory on Instagram. So it's at Pink Armory, PINKAROMRY underscore. So you can reach me at anything Pink Armory online, email, anything like that, for anything, any purpose. And if I can help, I will be there. But if I can't, I will find somebody to help. Inshallah.
I love it. Amazing, amazing. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your story. I know that it's a deep one. It's a deep one.
Hmm.
I have I've seen someone after they've gotten shot, and that was at actually like 2 or 3 years old, and I can still remember the colors in the room. I can still remember a lot of those things that happened at that particular time. So, when you see that, it's not something that's easy to erase and move forward. So, as people go through challenging situations, as people try to comfort other people who are going through challenging situations, hopefully, prayerfully, something you said today will resonate and give them the strength and the courage along the way. Hopefully, prayerfully, if someone is in need of services, in need of support, that they will reach out to you um, uh, to build themselves and to get stronger. So, once again, thank you for everything. You are really and truly a blessing. And I thank you so much for this time.
Thank you. I appreciate you for giving me the platform. Like I'm so grateful.
Awesome. And this is her first time, guys. And she said she was nervous. She wasn't nervous. She was not even near nervous. I love what you said. I
Bye.
love your energy. I mean, you
Thank
brought it.
you.
You brought
Thank
it. You said,
you.
remember, you
Thank
said, I
you.
don't know what to say. I don't know if I
Yeah.
can do it. You brought it home. You nailed it. You
Thank
nailed it.
you. Thank
All
you.
right. Beautiful. Well, I will
All
be in
right.
touch.
All
Thanks
right.
again.
Bye.